Hey, 6th and 7th graders, let's talk bandsaw safety. First of all, a lot of people don't even know why a bandsaw is actually called a bandsaw. So let me show you on this one right here where I have it open. So I just opened the doors here. You can see there's two wheels, one on the bottom, one on the top. And the blade is actually a band, which runs from the bottom wheel up to the top wheel, so it's stretched tight. So here's the blade, okay, which is a band, but it's metal. And so when the bottom wheel spins from the motor, the blade is stretched tight, spins the top wheel, and there's your cutting motion right there going down. And this should be closed all the time. And then I'm going to use this one over here. Hopefully you can see this one okay. So it's never a good idea to stand on the right side of the bandsaw. To stand on the right side, it could be dangerous. The blade could come out there if the blade ever broke. If the blade does break, you're going to hear a thud. There's going to be a cloud of dust, and you're going to freak out. It's not terrible. Sometimes a blade breaks because of operator error. Sometimes a blade breaks simply because it's worn out. But if you hear that thump and the blade stops moving, just hit the stop button with your knee. That's why it's a big, huge stop button, and just move back. You don't turn around and run away, freak out. I will hear it probably wherever I am in the room. I'm probably going to hear it. I'll come over and take care of it. Not a huge deal. Okay. So there's a couple things that need to be said on the bandsaw, and that depend on what you're cutting. Like, for example, 6th graders, you're going to be cutting your CO2 car, which is a real thick piece of material. It's about 1.5 inches thick. 7th graders, you are cutting on your maple for your speaker project, which is only 3/4 of an inch thick. So if you look at the two, you can see there's a big difference in thickness. Well, this guard that helps keep your fingers out of the blade, and it's also a guide to keep the blade straight, that needs to be set only like 1/8 of an inch above your material. So right now, this one is set pretty much perfect for you. Maybe have trouble seeing that. I can maybe get you a little bit closer, not a whole lot. This is just above that material. Right now, if I try to get the piece in here for my CO2 car, it's not going to fit because this is too low. So this has to be set by loosening this machine. It takes a pliers or something to loosen it. And then you move it up, set it on I set the guard on my material, raise it up and tighten it. And so then I have it about 1/8 of an inch above my material, and it's tight so it's not going anywhere. Most machines just have a thumb screw there, but now it's 1/8 of an inch above my CO2 car. So now I wouldn't want to cut on my maple, my 3/4 inch maple with this, because now I got all kinds of room. I get my hands underneath the guard and get them into the blade. So right now it's set for this, which I wouldn't want to cut the maple on there because it's too thin. It'd be dangerous. Can you cut curves on the bandsaw? Yeah, that's mainly what they're for. They don't cut straight cuts real well. They will, but not real well. If you want something real straight, you're going to do it on a bandsaw or another kind of saw. I mean, a table saw or a different kind of saw. But as far as bandsaw use, like let's say CO2 car, and this project too, you never want to back out of a curved cut. You can back out of a straight cut without turning the machine off. But if you have to back out of a curved cut, turn the machine off first. So let's say, I don't know if you can see this very well, this is a CO2 car, and we're gonna make something in here called release cuts. And what a release cut is, I'm gonna see if I can get better lighting so you can actually see this if I get away from behind the window. No, that didn't help at all. So we're gonna keep doing what we're doing. But if I were going to cut this car out, which you can't see probably very well on here, but I'm gonna make some cuts in here first that are called release cuts that just go in and they back out so that I don't have to back out of a curve, because backing out of curves is bad. it can pull the blade towards you. It can pull it off the wheels. And once again, you'll hear a thud. It might break the blade, but at any rate, it's going to pull it off, and that's not good because then Mr. Wakefield has to get there and fix it. Now, anything that could get caught in machines needs to be taken care of, like I take off my lanyard. I clip it to my pocket usually so it's down below so it's not going to get in the way of anything. Can't get caught. I have my guard set the right height. I'm going to tip this down a little bit. And so the release cuts are to avoid backing out of the cut. And you keep your fingers at least 2 inches from the blade at all times. 2 inches is our rule of thumb, and 2 inches is about like that. I would think if you're getting your fingers closer than that, to something that can take them off, you would hopefully be getting a little worried about it, and you'd get them back. So I'm going to do some release cuts, then I'm maybe going to cut the first couple cuts on here on the CO2 guard, which is kind of hard for you to see. But I can put 2 hands on one side of the blade, or I can put 1 hand on each side of the blade. It depends on where I'm cutting. So if I want to run this one, I'm going to actually, and I'm going to move my camera so you can hopefully see a little better while I'm cutting. Okay, right now I've got 2 hands on one side. I'm going to cut in, and before I get to that line, I'm going to back up. Now I can be 2 hands away with my hands on both sides. So I move this hand over. Okay, and then I got a couple more release cuts to do. Over here with 2 hands. You can cut with 1 hand for release cuts if it works better. 1 hand works better for me there, that's okay. Right? Now, if I start cutting these chunks off and I stay outside my line, right, I'm going to have a little piece. Here's the one I'm going to shove it off. Here's the one that drives me nuts. Kids are really careful when they're cutting to keep their fingers 2 inches from the blade. All the time, 2 inches, no matter what. But then, while the machine is running, they have a scrap piece like this. They reach in and they grab it right next to the blade. Don't do that. Oh my goodness, it drives Mr. Wakefield crazy. Do you not care about your fingers? You can lose them just as easily by reaching in there to grab scrap as you can when you're cutting. So first of all, this scrap was laying next to the blade. It's not going to hurt anything. I go to make my next cut, it's going to push it out of the way. Oh no, it might fall on the floor. Big deal. We're going to clean the floor up later. It's not worth losing a finger over. If it's in front of the blade, yeah, maybe it's in the way. So what can I do? I can take my CO2 cut I'm cutting, I can push it out of the way. Okay, now I can grab it, or I can just push it on the floor. Once in a while, you might get a piece that wedges itself. Let's see if I can find a small scrap here. There we go. You might get a piece that wedges itself down in the blade. I'm going to show you this, hopefully. Okay. That piece right here got wedged in the little slot that the blade runs in. So in that case, I'm going to have to shut off the machine, wait till it stops, and pull that piece out. Not a big deal. Not worth losing my fingers over though. Okay? So release cuts are a big thing. They make it so that what I did was I cut these. So then when I made this first cut here, and I did these release cuts. So then when I made this first cut here, this chunk fell off. It released the blade. The blade comes out. Now I can make another cut. Now I would cut from this direction on there, right? So fingers 2 inches from the blade. So you can imagine a circle of safety around this blade would be 4 inches, a 4-inch diameter circle of safety. And so you're not going to get hurt if you stay outside that circle of safety with your fingers. And then there's one other rule I have. It's called the saw line. Fingers must be out of the saw line at all times. Here's what the saw line is. It's an imaginary line from the teeth on this blade all the way back until something stops it. Right now it stops at this machine. When I'm standing here, the saw line stops at me. My fingers are out of that saw line all the time when it's running. Because let's say if I was cutting something like maybe this, down lengthwise, okay? And I have my fingers, my hands on each side of the blade. If I slip, my fingers are going on each side of the blade. That's a good thing. If I have my thumb, say, across like this, okay, on my board here, and I'm pushing and I slip, my thumb's going right into the blade. Obviously not good. Fingers out of the saw line. The other thing that happens, and I know it sounds crazy, people have been known to forget to move their fingers. They have them on their pencil line, they're cutting. I know someone, I went to high school with someone, cut half of his pinky off because he simply forgot to move his hand. He knew it was there, but he forgot to move his finger. So don't put yourself in that situation. Don't put your fingers in the saw line. 2 inches away, out of the saw line, don't stand on the right side of the machine. Don't turn too sharp. If you hear like a high-pitched whine, it means one of two things. You're either pushing too fast, which kids don't do too much because usually you're a little bit scared of the machine and you don't cut real fast. But the more common one is turning too sharp. What happens is the blade runs in a little slot with metal blocks on each side of it. If that blade twists too much, it rubs on the metal blocks, makes a high-pitched squeal. You know you're turning too hard. You need to stop turning so much. Now, do you stop and you back out of that curve? No, just stop pushing. The beauty about the bandsaw is if something's going wrong, I can just stop pushing. Look, it cuts only when I'm pushing. So watch. Now, if I want to stop, I just let go. Okay? The machine's still running, yes, but it's not cutting anymore, even though my block's there. It's got to have pressure in order for it to cut. Okay? If it's a straight cut, I can back out of it and I can turn the machine off. But if it's a curved cut, you need to shut it off before you back out. Right? So hopefully that gives you a good background on the bandsaw, and it's time to take your bandsaw safety test.